My guest on the Culture Crawl is John Dowdall, part of Red Cedar Chamber Music, the organization that performs acoustic, period, and new music in eastern Iowa, although not quite so acoustic, not quite so period this
Right.
time.
We like to pride ourselves for kind of doing a lot of different things within the context of our framework, which is traditionally, like you said, 19th century music on period instruments, but then we do a lot of commissioning of new music too. But it all has been up to this point for acoustic instruments.
And we'll explain making music with Dave in a little bit. But let's talk just for a second, for those who may not be familiar with Red Cedar Chamber Music. As I alluded, what you do generally is perform music as it was performed 150 years ago and longer in small spaces, because in days gone by there were people couldn't afford to go to concert halls and things like that. So if you wanted to have music, you just invited some musicians to come and hang out in your living room.
Right. So this was house music. That's chamber music. Basically means chamber is a small room. So it's music for a small room. And in the early 19th century, around the 1820s, that's really about as far back as we go, let's say to 1800, because the music and the instruments that we play from back then was all created post-French Revolution. The guitar, the six-string guitar, was developed right around 1800. There was the new flute, which was not just a single-keyed flute, which had been in Bach's time, but this had multi-keys. The one Jan plays actually has 11 keys. And so this music was really popular from about 1800 to about 1840, somewhere in there. And so we try to do it on the period instruments and in the sense that it was done back then. And there were not only people who couldn't afford to go to concert halls, there just weren't concert halls. It wasn't the traditional thing. About the 1830s, 1840s, that's when concert halls really started to come in big time, and that's when they developed a lot of the modern instruments to make them louder so that they could fill concert halls instead of little chamber spaces.
And of course, as time has come on, when we say chamber music, we think of old music, but what you and Jan, your partner and the flutist in the ensemble, have done is expanded that to say, well, chamber music is any music played in a small space.
Correct. And the definition of chamber music has grown since we established ourselves back in 1979. That was about the same time that the Chamber Music America established itself. That's our national organization in New York. And at that point, they were basically thinking chamber music, and they were even thinking of a narrower context of like string quartets. And now it's grown to a big part of their program is chamber jazz.
Well, I was just going to say that I know several jazz musicians who describe what they do as chamber music.
Exactly, and they fund a lot of jazz, very big part of their program, and they've expanded it now to world music. So any small ensemble, and still we tend to think of an ensemble as an acoustic ensemble, but that's not even necessary either. It's where you're dealing with intimacy and an exchange of ideas with a group of people who are having basically a musical conversation. It's not like you got 6 trumpets all playing the same line. That's not chamber music, but if you have one trumpet playing an interesting line and that's being played off a bass player and a piano player, it's that small group feel. And really that's what got me into music. Was I loved Peter, Paul, and Mary and the Chad Mitchell Trio and the Kingston Trio, that whole era, because I loved that communication that was going on between that small group of people in an intimate setting. So whether it's amplified or acoustic, it's still going to be intimate. We're not talking about blaring sounds and a 20-piece big band. That's not chamber music.
And speaking of amplification, this is the first concert that I know of that you are bringing an amplified instrument into the mix.
Right. We are bringing an amplified instrument in the mix, but that doesn't mean that we're all going with microphones. It's still an acoustic mix, and we're adding an electric guitar, but it's going to be balanced to fit the acoustic instruments, which is, of course, a challenge that we're still facing. We've had initial rehearsals and a couple of performances in early September, but this is the week, the very first concert we do that we're going to talk about here on October 1st. We'll be recording that and then listening back and assessing how well that works. But we've got to get it right, because when we end this concert series on the 5th of October, on the 6th, we're going to record this. So let's go to it's actually the name of the concert is Makin Music
Oh,
with Dave.
I'm sorry, Makin
Right.
music with Dave.
Because we're trying to sound a little hip. Right. I mean, as I told Dave Bosenhart, who's the guitarist, who's coming in, I said, Dave, playing with you is as close to hip as I'll ever get.
That's right. You're coming in to make us cool.
Right, exactly. And I think he's done a pretty good job, actually. This is all an outgrowth of an association with Dave Bosenhart, who's a Philadelphia-based musician, who started coming to our summer festivals, which we hold for flute and guitar duos from around the country. Back in 2000, he came to the first one, and then he's come a long time since. But he's always been a dual, well, let's say a plethora of guitarists. He's a rock guitarist. He's a blues guitarist. He's a funk guitarist. He's a jazz guitarist, and he's a classical guitarist. So he's one of these unusual performers that can do all these styles, and that's kind of his MO in Philly. He likes to be able to mix in with almost any kind of group on a moment's notice. And about 3 years ago, he went through the University of the Arts in Philly, which is a jazz-based master's degree. And so he did some recording as part of that, and he told us when he came last year that he wanted to do a CD of his own compositions, and he'd love to do one for Red Cedar. So that's where the germ of this idea got. And he said, I'm going to compose a piece. And we said, well, if you're going to compose a piece, we should have you come here and do it on our series. So he has written two pieces, actually. He's written one called Whirlpool Side, the idea that life is like a big whirlpool churning around, and we can see that with all the things going on in the Middle East and the Ebola crisis and all that big whirlpool. And we're all trying on the other side to find our little poolside place where we can sit and have our moment of relaxation, even though the world is churning around us. So it's a three-movement work for cello, classical guitar, flute, these are all modern instruments, and electric guitar. And so Dave has written this for us. We did a couple of early concerts in September to kind of get our feet wet, and people really responded to this. People all the way from the people in their 90s to young musicians who are versed in classical and jazz music and pop music. And one of the musicians said, you know, this piece is fresh, fun to listen to, and really harmonically interesting. So you're going to find this is really relevant to KCCK because it's chamber music that's written with a distinct jazz influence, lots of jazz harmonies, you know, extended chords, flat fives, flat nines, 13s, 11s, and a real pop feel with a lot of really interesting rhythms. So it's really going to, I think, appeal to a broad spectrum of the audience. And then he's also written a guitar duo, which might be for classical and acoustic, or it might be for classical and classical, depending on what he just sent me a text and said, you know, I'm thinking maybe two classicals would be good for this. But it's kind of, it appeals to me a lot. It's a little bit like fingerstyle picking from the folk era, mixed with jazz, and again, a rich harmonic palette.
Interesting.
So it's really fun music. Great fun to play, and I think it's going to be great fun to listen to.
Talking with John Dowdall from Red Cedar Chamber Music about Making Music with Dave,
Right.
the upcoming concerts. Now, the way this works, of course, is that you do several rural outreach concerts around the area, and then you kind of culminate in the main concert, which usually is at the end. But let's work backwards.
Okay.
Let's start with the main concert, and then we'll mention the rural outreach concerts, too.
Okay. Well, the main concert is Saturday, October the 4th, First Presbyterian Church at 8 p.m., and that's a great acoustic space.
That is the acoustics of that space are just incredible.
And then the renovation has made it just visually, so it's such a great space to hear music in. So I hope people really try to get that one because it's very special. We'll have a post-concert reception there. Tickets for that are $15 in advance, $18 at the door, $10 for 30 and under, which this might be a real appeal to those people. And you can get tickets by calling Red Cedar Chamber Music, 377-8028. And the other concerts, everything we're going to talk about is on our website at www.redcedar.org, and then always on your website, or the website of the Iowa Cultural Corridor,
Culturalcorridor.org.
Right.
So you're going to looks like you're going to start your tour in Monticello.
We're going to start in Monticello, and that's going to be on Wednesday, October the 1st. It's 7 o'clock. That one's going to be a $10 ticket price, and that one will again have a reception, a dessert reception. So they do a very nice job there. That also is just a lovely, the United Church of Monticello, lovely acoustic space. So I can't encourage you strongly enough to get out to that concert. That's really wonderful. Then we kind of jump over October 2nd. We don't have anything on Thursday, October the 2nd. Then we go to Friday, October the 3rd. And that evening at 7 p.m. will be at Fairfax. And that's a really fun little place because it's just a little library room. But it's a cool little room, not as acoustically fine as these other places, but very, very intimate. And we've got a guy there, Vern Chervany, who marshals people. He makes a lot of homemade desserts, and he gets other people to chip in. So it's kind of in a cabaret style. So you've got tables, and you've got a pile of cookies in the middle of the tables that you can eat while you listen. So that one's got its own fun feel as well. That one actually will fit very well with the music for this concert.
The informal nature.
The informal nature, and the let's go hear some jazz and eat some cookies. So that one's really fun. And that's a free concert at 7 o'clock on October the 3rd, Friday at Fairfax. Then the next day on Saturday, when we do our main concert, that afternoon at noon, we're at Lisbon Library. And so we're going to do a double that day show. So if you want to try the Lisbon Library, traditionally at the Lisbon Library, we're in Heritage Hall. But we have heard that they're doing the floors, so if the floors are done, we'll be in Heritage Hall, which is a performance space on the second floor of the library. And if not, we'll be, I think they have another room that's right there at the library, but I'm not sure what that is. So that's at noon on the 4th.
And then usually you're done then on Saturday, but not this time. You've got one more.
This time we're doing a lagniappe, which they call in New Orleans, which is a little something extra. And that is we're going to the Sondheim Center in Fairfield on Sunday the 5th. And that will be at 3 p.m. And
another great space.
That's another great space. So there's so many wonderful acoustic spaces to hear us in, and then most of these have reception, so it's just it's fun music. It's going to be a fun group of people, really, and something totally different for us. And maybe your only chance, I'm not sure there's another piece of music out here with this mix of instruments. So it's really a neat experiment on Dave's part, and I think he's done us proud. I'm really excited about it.
Red Cedar Chamber Music, Making Music with Dave. Again, your website, if people want more information,
www.redcedar.org, and that's how they can find out about all the rural outreach concerts and specifically how to get tickets from us.
John Dowdall from Red Cedar. John, thanks so much for being here. Good luck with the concert. And when you get the recording done, make sure we get a copy of that.
Okay, we will. I'll have Dave do that. I also want to say that there is some classical music on this concert. There's also some Schubert Arpeggione Sonata, and there's another great, some pieces by Bartók. So some things for the,
something
our
for
normal
everybody.
Classical group too.
Thanks so much, John.
Thanks, Dennis.